Welcome back, Templar, to part 2 of the Should You Get the M4A5 Ram. I'm Brad Templar, and without further ado, let's get straight into this video. So, where we left off is on the strengths and weaknesses of this tank, so what it is strong and weak against, and as you can see on your screens now, it is very strong against pretty much any AA that it does come up against at its battle rating, and it's also quite good against light tanks that it comes up against at its battle rating, as although it doesn't have a very high penetrating cannon, often it is more than enough to deal with pretty much any light or AA trucks you find at this battle rating. I have also put medium tanks as well as fighters and rockets all as strengths as well, for the simple fact that, well, sometimes it isn't great against medium tanks, but for the most part it can penetrate their armour at its battle rating, and when you get down tiered you can penetrate just about any medium to heavy tank, but when you get up tiered it starts to get a bit more complicated. So yes, overall I'd say it was strong against other medium tanks, but I think that largely relies on the other player not knowing the weaknesses of this tank, as it were, and for you having a good shot on you. As for the rockets and fighters, well, pretty much every fighter this can come up against can't penetrate it with its main armament, and rockets this is actually surprisingly good against. In fact, here's a good example coming up right now, not of rockets, mind you, of artillery, but as you can see I got hit almost directly by a massive barrage of artillery. Other than breaking the track, didn't do anything, and that's the main, what's one of the main good parts about this tank, that it is fairly well armoured all around, so rockets and explosives, even if they hit around or below or above your tank, don't seem to often do too much to it. As for what this tank is weak against, and well, it mostly is quite simply just heavy tanks and tank destroyers are the two worst for this one. I mean, I've come up against things like KV-1s in this tank before, and I've even come up against IS-1s before in this tank. Not that you can actually fight those at this battle rating, but they're not too far off its battle ratings. And it really struggles against them. But yeah, KV-1s though, you definitely can come up against at this battle rating. It really struggles to beat them, and even with its fast reload, you'd be lucky to beat one of them in your first shot, or second, or third, or fifth, or, well, realistically with any sort of period of time before it shoots back and kills you, as you've probably seen quite a few times in the videos where I've had to shoot so many shots into KV-1s and similar tanks to beat them. So yeah, overall this tank does suffer against heavy tanks quite badly due to its low penetration and non-high explosive armor piercing shot. Also, as I already said, tank destroyers this is quite weak against as well, as often with their very high penetration values it means that the shots will often go through even the heaviest parts of this thing's armor. So yeah, I mean, if it hits you in a weak spot then God help you, but if it hits you in one of your most armoured parts of this tank, even then there's only still very few parts on this tank that can survive against sort of the later tank destroyers this can come up against. So all in all, I would say that this is pretty weak against tank destroyers in general. Which leads us on to the additional information of the tank that you may want to know. And starting off this list, we start with its max speed of 25 miles an hour, which is, well, respectable for a tank of its battle rating, and respectable of any tank, really. The next point to bring up is its maximum gun depression is only -7 degrees, which isn't great. I guess you could put that in the disadvantages of this tank if you really wanted, but I didn't see it as too bad, so I never did. As for its gun elevation, however, you're looking at 20 degrees max elevation, which is, once again, yeah, it's alright. About what you'd hope of most tanks, really. Also, your main cannon, which is the QF 6-pounder Mark III, for those who aren't aware, is supported by three 7.62 Browning M19 19A4 machine guns, which are actually not too bad. I've actually been capable of shooting down aircraft with them, as you get three, and they're pretty well spaced through the tank. So you have one on top of the turret for shooting down aircraft, and you have one in the main turret for shooting shooting as the gunner, and then you have a third one placed in the radio gunner operator position next to the driver, which actually has a very good all-around traverse, and is basically just stolen off the top of an M3 Lee, if we're perfectly honest. But yeah, all in all, not a bad secondary armament at all. The last point to raise is that it has a max turret traverse of 15 degrees per second, which is, once again, it's fine. It's not particularly fast, not particularly slow, it's alright for what it is. So, with all that said, the now real question is, how well does it perform in-game? I mean, after all, it can have the best stats in the world, but if it doesn't perform well in-game, well, then it's completely worthless. And, well, it's okay. I would say it was okay, but I would really struggle to say more, and for reasons I've already said before. Well, I mean, first off the bat, it's inconsistent. The armor on it, sometimes tanks literally, reserve tier tanks could beat you head on in this tank. So if they fire in specific positions, they can beat you. However, sometimes you can come up against 4.7 battle rating tanks, the highest you can possibly come up against, and indeed I've come up against even higher ones still, just to test out how well it does in pretty high battle rank games, and they couldn't penetrate me from head on. Mainly because they kept hitting the really, really strong parts of this tank. So as I've already said, it's inconsistent, which makes it hard to say it's good. Not only that, but also the cannon on it is okay for its battle rating, but it's really, really starting to lack once you get the up tiers going. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good cannon. Yeah, you know, I'm not saying that it's not for 1 second, but it's not a good cannon at a 3.7 battle rating fighting 4.7 battle rating tanks. And indeed, the only other tank I can think of that even uses this cannon is the Crusader, or one of the Crusaders. I believe it's the Mark III that uses it. So it sort of goes without saying that with a 1.0 battle rating difference between these two tanks, you can start to see why its cannon just simply isn't performing very well at its current battle rating, and it doesn't help that it only fires solid shot and not high explosive armor piercing. So, I suppose we might as well get to the conclusion of the video for the question you've all been waiting for, which is, should you get the M4A5 Ram? And well, I'd say that if you are looking for a premium tank that you want just for the sake of leveling up faster, as is one of the main reasons why you get premium tanks, especially ones like this that don't have anything interesting about them, then unless you really, really want the Ram because you just like it for being the tank that it is, I'd say no. Because, well, there are better tanks at its battle rating that are premium, and I found are actually just a lot better. Like the other American premium tank. What is it? Is it the T14 or the TI4 or something like that? I've actually tested that tank out, and I can assure you, And with that, I thank you all very much for watching. This has been quite a long episode, and I have managed to get out 2 videos this weekend rather than just the usual one, so you can thank me for that later. And yeah, so if you like what you saw, do make sure to like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, I say thank you very much, and I'll see you then.